Hello, welcome to Lazada Insider, featuring knowledge that makes a difference. We share trusted insights, forward-looking perspectives, and exclusive expert interviews to keep you ahead of the curve.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Lazada Insider Consumer Insights series. And I'm your host, Katrina, Senior Manager from Lazada Group Strategy. Today, we're going to talk about Omnichannel. I mean, if years ago you thought it was still a buzzword in retail, today it's already become the reality and the key for success in the future. And we're going to discuss this topic in detail with our expert guest, Neil from Kantar. Well, this pandemic, the prevalence of technology and the changes of consumer behavior have almost redefined the word shopping. And Neil is here today to help us decode what business need to know and need to do to win in the omni-channel world. Neil is currently the Strategic Insight Director from Kantar Worldpanel, and he comes with more than 20 years of experience in market research and shopper and customer analytics. He's passionate about delivering actionable shopper insights and recommendations to his broad range of local and multinational clients. Hi, Neil. It's great to have you on Lazada Insider.
Thank you, Katrina, and it's a pleasure to be here. Very exciting to share some ideas and insights with you today. My name, as you've said, is Neil. I'm an Insight Director at the Worldpanel. I'm actually based in Singapore. I've been here for the last 5 years, but as you mentioned, I've been in the region quite some time, going back to the early 2000s. So I've got quite a lot of experience traveling to most of the countries in the region. I'm an avid shopper. I do a lot of online shopping, but I also love to get out into the offline world as well. So hoping today to really have an interesting conversation with you.
That's great. That's great. You've certainly spent most of your career in Asia, I guess, since 2000. I mean, no wonder you really know our consumers in this region like the back of your hand. So let's talk about your latest observations then. Well, we know that, the pandemic has really upended what and how consumers shop in FMCG setting. So if we look at consumers' shopping behavior this year versus 2020 and pre-COVID-19, what are your major observations on the shifts, and how has this change actually impacted the overall FMCG landscape?
So I think whilst there are obviously lots of changes still happening in consumers' lifestyles, many of the changes are not actually new. They're either things that were perhaps already underway in the pre-COVID world, or have been accelerated, since the pandemic started, and we're sort of seeing a continuation of that. So as people get used to living now, with the restrictions and with this new way of life, their shopping behaviors and retailers are adjusting to that one. So, for example, Inhome, it's such a massive shift. When the pandemic first hit, we were suddenly, all locked up at home. We couldn't go out to restaurants. We potentially couldn't access certain retailers if they were in malls that were locked down or were too far away, or outside of a zone where we were allowed to travel. So certainly mobility continues to weigh heavily on shoppers, and we continue to see waves and waves of new breakouts and new government responses to that one. So I think the whole in-home space has continued to play out with things like cooking more at home, doing things more with your family, coming up with new ways of sort of entertainment at home, and as I say, making up for not being able to go out and enjoy it or meet friends outside of the home as well. So I think that in-home element, food and beverages, has been incredibly important for continuing to drive the growth of FMCG. I mean, the growth rates have slowed down. We saw a lot of immediate panic buying from some of the populations, through the middle of 2020. Clearly that has gradually again disappeared as people have got used to new lockdowns coming into effect. So the growth rates are still there, but at a slightly slower pace. What else has happened is, again, because of mobility, because of the need to perhaps avoid going into busy stores and wanting to avoid being in crowds, basket sizes have also continued to go up. But again, this is actually something we were seeing in 2019 and actually for many, many years before that one. The average basket size has been going up. Frequency of shopping has been coming down. But as I say, that has been accelerated by COVID and certainly will continue into the future probably as well. I think from a channel point of view, again linked to mobility and the pandemic, the big box retailers really have struggled. Proximity has been a resounding success. Okay, I think e-commerce, again, and we'll probably talk more about this, of course, everyone knew that e-commerce is rapidly growing and would do very well. But I think the surprising thing has perhaps been the resilience of traditional trade. People have sort of flooded out and going back to their mom and pop retailer that they probably haven't been shopping in for a long time, simply because they need to get something quick, get in and get out and get home again. So I think, this is all playing together and really changing, I guess, the missions that shoppers go to different channels for. So, those traditional big routine and stock up occasions are more and more now being done in smaller and smaller retailers. So that's quite surprising, and seeing how, categories are having to adapt to that and retailers. So I think, those are sort of some of the changes that we're seeing that are a continuation and an acceleration, I think, of what we've seen previously.
So if you break down the observation a little bit, have you observed any interesting dynamics by country? And if you can talk a bit more about category and channel, that would be really interesting for us to know.
Sure. So I think one of the key things that we always talk about at Kantar when we look at the data is there's not really an average Southeast Asia. So although we see all these trends at a macro level, when you start to drill down into the individual markets and categories and retailers, of course, you start to see interesting nuances. So, I think the Philippines, I think most people would know, they've probably had one of the longest lockdowns in the world. And whereas other countries sort of benefited from lockdowns and had that initial stocking up, the Philippines was sort of sent into a shock recession, and FMCG has really sort of suffered since then. So, that country stands out versus, elsewhere, like in Thailand and Vietnam, where we actually saw some quite high growth rates around the initial outbreak. And now, as I say, through into 2021, we continue to see differences in the individual markets. Some of it is influenced by governments. So, for example, in Thailand, we see handouts either to the general population or to specific parts of the population, like lower income households given additional income to spend through the Blue Flag scheme. So again, depending on how governments are reacting to the different situations as well. And then, of course, as I mentioned previously, we are still having small waves of the virus breaking out. So looking at Vietnam, it was a country that had very, very low numbers of infections and deaths through 2020, and was praised globally of how they shut down very early and managed the situation, but has now had some very severe outbreak, to the point where people in Ho Chi Minh were locked at home and the army had to come in and deliver their groceries. So, that's obviously having a clear impact on the sort of categories and how you shop. If you're having to put your order in and have a soldier deliver it in a couple of days' time. So, really, really interesting. I think from a category perspective, as I say, food and beverages are having a great time with, everyone being locked up and unable to go to restaurants. I think home care, of course, as some of the categories have done well, particularly around home hygiene. Laundry has struggled a bit more because, people are going out less. They don't have perhaps uniforms or work clothes. They just have one set of clothes to wear. So, some of the specific categories may have struggled. And then in personal care, again, some big differences between the basic staples, your shampoos and your soaps, which have just continued. Everyone needs to use them, and we do see some more people obviously looking for anti-bac and hygiene particular products. versus some of the more individual or higher end products such as moisturizers and cosmetics, which have taken a massive hit. So I think, again, there's some very interesting dynamics at category level. People have had to make some very hard decisions to drop some things from their baskets in order to better manage their household incomes as well.
Interesting. I mean, these are very good observations and changes that you have seen, right, in the countries. So as you mentioned, there are still waves of COVID-19 virus, and we know that probably much of the next 1 to 2 years remain a little bit uncertain, right? But based on your understanding, on the data, on the trends that you see right now, how do you really foresee these behaviors that you mentioned progress in the next 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, so I think obviously we're all waiting for the moment we can all go back out into the world. I think perhaps most of us thought that this would be over and 2021 would kind of at some point get back to normal. But as you rightly said, it seems to almost feel never ending. And I watched the news about the UK, and they're having their highest cases for 6 months. So it does seem that the new normal or whatever is a long way off. So I would imagine through 2022, a lot of the in-home behaviors, working from home still, even if offices do slowly start to reopen, I think a lot of people will want to still work at home, maybe 2-3 days a week. But of course, as things do open up, I think food and beverage will probably be the category that sees perhaps the biggest shifts, because there will be a lot of that out-of-home consumption starting up again. People really want to go out and have a meal with their friends and their families, etc. So I think the food and beverage categories, as I say, in particular, I think also as people are allowed to go back and mobility, eases up, some of the categories of which were initially cut out because they're not essential anymore, again, will also start to come back. So as people need to start wearing 2 sets of clothes and have uniforms, laundry categories might start to do better again. People want to start looking better. So again, all the sort of the beauty element of personal care, the deodorants, the moisturizers, the makeup, etc., will also rebound quite healthily as well. And I think as people start to see that recovery, and hopefully people that have lost their job and suffered can start to get back to work again, and economies get going, and they've got more disposable income, I think people will start to look to treat themselves as well. We've been under pressure and quite depressing times now for coming up for 2 years. So I think the potential for people to want to treat themselves to perhaps something a bit more premium than they would have bought before is also potentially a very interesting angle as well.
You share quite a lot about the dynamics when it comes to categories and when it comes to different segments of products like premium products. How about from a channel perspective? How do you foresee, currently, obviously, consumers are mostly staying at home, right? And they do a lot of shopping online. Where do you see this play in the near future?
Yeah, so I think to me, I think the proximity element and the convenience element is something that people are going to get used to, and are going to adapt and adopt as habits. So again, sort of convenience and online shopping were things that were growing prior to the pandemic, but have really been accelerated. And I think now that people have got used to, having things delivered, or, just popping out and buying close to home, I think that will continue, for some time. And I think the big box retailers, again, were struggling pre-COVID. Through 2017, 18, 19, the hypermarket channel has not been doing well. And I think it's going to be really tough for that channel to really recover. So I think it's a great space, as I say, for online shopping and convenience. The ability to get things now, is going to become more important. We're all living on our smartphones. Real time is where it's at, and we do see that in models all over the world with delivery times coming down and down. People just want to be able to shop and get it and have it sort of delivered, or it's close to home. So definitely, I think from a channel perspective, the growth channels at the moment around e-commerce and proximity, I think will do well. Where I'm sort of undecided is traditional trade. As I said, it's had a bit of a renaissance because it benefits from the proximity angle. There's hundreds of thousands of them across across countries in Southeast Asia. However, a lot of it, as I've said, is as a result of government stimulus. You can only spend it in certain channels and certain retailers. So I think potentially the traditional trade may slow down and eventually stagnate again. But yeah, I think, as I say, the growth will certainly be e-commerce and proximity into the future. Just one more thing, I think basket sizes, as I mentioned, they've been going up and up and up, and that has been accelerated. I do see that trend will also continue. I think people, again, are consolidating trips. They've got used to, as I say, shopping and trying to get more things in one go in order to bring that convenience into their life. So, I do see that basket sizes will continue to rise, and shopping frequency, will continue to gradually decline.
I see. So if we zoom into e-commerce a little bit more, as consumers actually becoming more savvier in this space, and there must be some interesting trends emerged in that area. So maybe you can tell us your observation. What are some of the interesting dynamics that you have seen in e-commerce that business need to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's a bit like the classic, you can't average Asia, you can't average Southeast Asia, you can't really average how e-commerce is developing as well. And I think that's really fascinating, when you start to look into the data at the different stages that the countries are in. So, I was just looking at some of the data earlier. So in Ho Chi Minh, again, the recent lockdowns there have actually pushed the penetration of online shopping above 50%. So that's the first time I've ever seen more than half of a particular part of a population. As I say, more than half are now buying their groceries through online retail. So that's a big milestone. But you also see, much lower levels in certain other demographics in rural areas, etc. So there are these, different stages that all the countries are at. But what is interesting is that despite all the different development levels, the countries are actually all following a very similar journey. So it starts off predominantly with the sort of the city dwelling, higher income, younger, early adopters of e-commerce, and then it gradually ripples out to more sort of secondary towns and cities, and then slightly older consumers, and then eventually now, as I say, it is now making it out into rural areas and older and less affluent consumers. So the differences and the similarities are are very important to look at from a category point of view as well. Again, there are big differences between different countries, but it seems that they all start at the same place, which is the first people to go online are those people in the cities and the more affluent and younger. And therefore, it tends to be things like cosmetics, moisturizers, and the more, as I say, individualized beauty products. And then gradually, as shopping online becomes a bit more frequent and a bit more mainstream, that's when we start to see other personal care categories creeping in. So your soaps, your shampoos, your body lotions, and then a couple of years after that, further developments happen, and now you start to see home care products and even food and beverage products creeping into those baskets as well. So again, it's really interesting, the similarities and also the differences as well. And then from an actual online perspective, if we break it down, you've also got the different plays between the platforms like the Lazadas of the world versus how, social commerce plays a role in certain people's lives. And then some of these other models coming now down from China, such as, O2O and group buying and all those other fragmentation, if you like, of online as well. So it is an incredibly interesting channel. It's evolving incredibly rapidly, so it's really interesting to see all these differences and, as I say, those similarities.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I completely echo with you when you talk about, actually these changes of demographic, right, of online shoppers actually correlate very well with the category dynamics and the category uptake in the online space. And you're absolutely right when it comes to the different new models of commerce. So I guess in the near future, it won't be like specific isolated models, but really all these different kind of channels and touch points working together eventually to serve the customer better. And that's essentially the essence of omni-channel. So like what you said, actually in Southeast Asia, the penetration of e-commerce still on the lower side, especially we compare with other more e-commerce matured countries in Asia. So what I think this means is that this region still has quite a huge potential to grow. So where do you think the top 3 untapped opportunities lies in for further growth? And what does it mean for brands in this region?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity size for e-commerce is absolutely enormous. I mean, trying to think of top 3 is actually quite difficult. If I think from just purely the penetration point of view, so getting more shoppers, adding online to their channel repertoire, as you said, we're already at 50% in Ho Chi Minh, but elsewhere there's massive headroom. So I mentioned in rural, we are starting to see an acceleration of rural households starting to engage with online. But I think the highest penetration level is either in Vietnam or in Thailand. It's around about 20%. So not only is it 25 to 30% behind what we see in urban and those bigger cities, it then has a 50% gap to the rest of the population. So there's huge opportunities just from the point of view of the shoppers. And rural is one. I mentioned that obviously the older generations, the less affluent, are also not the early adopters of e-commerce. But as systems and platforms become easier to use, as payment systems evolve, as trust in the ecosystem develops, as delivery systems emerge to fulfill orders, we are seeing these penetration black holes, if you like. Suddenly there is a spark of light, and people are actually breaking through and beginning to use e-commerce more. So, I mean, I think I've mentioned like 3 or 4, opportunities just if we just look at, getting more shoppers into e-commerce. There's a couple of other angles we can think about as well. There's the more basket angle. So it's not just about someone shopping online. I can do that once and then disappear, and I would count towards the towards the penetration of Lazada, for example. But if I come back and repeat, I'm still in that penetration, but now my frequency has gone up from 1 to 2. And what we're actually seeing on average across Southeast Asia is now people are using online about 6 times each. Okay, so that means there's probably some that use it once or twice. There's some that are already maybe using it 12 times a year, like once a month, but the average is around about 6. Okay, now compare that to China or the UK, where the average online shopper actually buys groceries around about 20 times a year. Again, that's an average, so there's going to be people only buying once or twice, but there's probably people buying almost, close to once a week, if not bi-weekly. So there's huge opportunities as well to continue to engage those online shoppers, to make them come back and repeat and make another online purchase in a couple of weeks or a month's time. And I think the beauty of online is because you get all their details. You get their email address, you've got their order, you know what they bought before. You have that opportunity to then re-engage with those shoppers and send them something to spark their interest. So there's massive headroom there. The sky is not quite the limit on it, but you can consider people buy their groceries a few hundred times a year. There's a lot of baskets to tap into. Okay, so we've got loads of shoppers that we can reach out to. We've got loads of more baskets amongst those shoppers. And then I think the third level, so once people are buying online, every week or every other week, whatever we can get it to, you've then got the option and the ability to then drive more spending in each of those baskets. So as I mentioned early in the e-com journey, it's all about cosmetics and moisturizers, etc. And now it's gradually evolving. So more and more categories are being considered, when shoppers are doing their online grocery. Okay, so there's potentially more categories we can put in. And then the other thing as well is not just more categories, but the category themselves. How do we get them to spend more on that category? Either through upsizing or offering more premium items, unique items for online, so that each basket then becomes more valuable as well. Okay, so there's essentially three main areas around shoppers, baskets, and more spend per basket. And then under each of those, there's sort of further opportunities. So as I say, very difficult to pick three. There's probably hundreds of opportunities out there.
Yeah, very interesting. And, I know that Kantar recently published a report on Omnichannel, and there you also have a lot of interesting advices to businesses who have both online and offline presence. I mean, a lot of our audience here also operate both in the digital world and also in the physical world. So what would be your advice to businesses in terms of the best strategies to get the best return from both channels?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big question. As you say, these days, brands, manufacturers, shoppers, offline to online, it is one big ecosystem. But I think, the crucial thing we need to keep in mind is that shopper is the same person. So, what they're doing online and offline is just part of their daily routine. They will have certain needs for certain products. If they've run out of something for dinner, they will need to go to a local shop to buy something. If they've got a bit more time to plan and notice what's running out around the household, they've got time to build, an online basket before they hit order. So, along the way, this is also a sort of a two-way journey as well. So in the past, people would just go very linear from a need to a decision and then to a purchase in an offline store. What we can now do is basically go backwards and forwards. So we can see things online, we can do our research, we can talk to friends, we can watch influencers, we can follow, particular sellers, etc., watch videos. We can then go offline and have a look at it in store, maybe see if there's any trial sizes available, or talk to, an in-store advisor, maybe try a free sample, and then potentially come back and buy offline. So the interplay between offline and online retail, with that kind of social media overlay to it, has completely changed the rules, if you like. So it's critical for anyone that operates offline and online to really maintain their presence consistently, across the journey, so that I am available for that same shopper, whether they have that immediate need and they go offline, whether they are planning an online purchase. I'm also present and I'm consistent in my messaging, and then I'm also obviously very present through those social media channels, so that I'm generating chat, I'm generating interest, I'm getting follows, I'm getting recommendations through the community, and then that's facilitating those instant sort of purchases as well. Okay, so as I say, it's critical for brands to be omnipresent across omnichannel. And then I think the other thing to keep in mind as well is, although it's very fluid, and shoppers now have so many choices to buy their grocery, we have to keep in mind that that online purchase shouldn't just be about moving an offline purchase online. Okay, if we do that, I think we've really missed an opportunity there. So again, when someone makes a decision to buy online, whether they've, as I say, been building a basket, whether they've engaged with social media and they've come across something and they've been redirected, whatever it might be, at that point where they go online, let's not just get them to buy what they would have bought offline. Okay, and again, there's many ways that we can do that. There's very exciting things, around gamification. There are obviously intercepts. There are unique things that we can offer online, import products, or things that won't be available offline. So you get a premium if you purchase this, and it's only available for the next 3 or 4 days. Some of those examples have instantly sold out, and have done very well for certain brands in certain categories. So there's things that you can do that are very exciting. But there's even things that you can do at a much more basic level, just playing around with pack and price. Okay, and I'll give you an example that's close to my heart, which would be soft drinks. So, for example, I like to drink soft drinks. I have a glass every day, and if I were to buy this category offline, I would be limited by how much I can carry back from the store or carry to the taxi or what have you. Okay, and as a result, if I've got a 1.5 litre, that's all I can carry, I would be pouring into a glass with some ice maybe 250 ml a day. But by going online, I search for my soft drinks. What comes up at the top of the search, because we can manipulate it and play around, is actually an offer on a 24 pack of my favorite soft drink. Now suddenly this looks attractive because I know I'm going to drink a lot of it. I drink it every day. It's bulky. I wouldn't buy this in the supermarket because I wouldn't be able to carry it home, but I'm going to have this delivered to my door. So this is fantastic, and it's at an attractive price per serving. So I have it delivered, and now I've got these cans of soft drink in the fridge. And what that effectively has done has moved my daily consumption from 200 to 250 immediately to 325. Okay, because I don't think anyone is going to open a can of soft drink and put it back in the fridge for tomorrow, because it's going to be very flat and not very tasty. So immediately you've got a 30% boost on my daily consumption rate. So the category has been expanded. So there are many examples of how incrementality can be done through online, through premiumization, through squeezing extra volume out of shoppers, about getting them to add an extra category that they weren't originally planning for, as well as all those other exciting things with limited offers and exclusive deals, etc. So yeah, loads of things that brands and businesses should be looking at when considering this sort of omni-channel play.
That's very exciting. I mean, I really look forward to how the next 1 to 2 years will unfold, given this dynamics that's happening already in the retail space. Thank you so much, Neil. As actually e-commerce is growing and the business are actually racing to explore the opportunity in the digital space, we actually got asked a lot, is e-commerce actually the future? And I think our conversation today really sparked me to reflect on this question. And I think number one, be where your consumers are. Number two, also think about, what are the incremental value that you can add when you move consumer from one channel to the other, actually probably working both way. So I think what you shared today, Neil, is really something that's critical for businesses to understand and to rethink about their channel play to prepare for the future of FMCG. Thanks a lot, Neil, for joining us and the great sharing.
Thanks, Katrina, for having me. It was a great session. Thank you.
This is Lazada Insider. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you click follow and subscribe so you don't miss our latest insights and expert interviews. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Lazada.